When I set up this channel originally, I intended to do a lot more book reviews or reviews of music or art than I've ever really got round to. And here's a book review. This is a book, since I've got blur on, I'll have to move it about a bit. This is a book called Stories of Weapons, Psychological Warfare in the American Mind by Annalee Newitz. And the reason I'm reading it is partly research, and I'm going to read out part of it. I had come to sift through the personal papers of a non military intelligence expert named Paul Linebarger, who wrote a handbook called Psychological Warfare for the US Army in the late 1940s. Most people will never have heard of Paul Linebarger. You won't know who he is. But Paul Linebarger's book, Psychological Warfare, had a massive impact on the conduct of psychological warfare. And there's a reason I mention him, because under another name, as a science fiction writer called Rainer Smith, he's a cult figure, and he's a figure that I have written on at length in another aspect of my life, shall we say. He was a subject of my master's degree, and he's the subject of an ongoing thesis. But I'm more interested in his work as a person writing about psychological warfare. But most people, as I say, I name Paul Linebarger, you'll never have heard of him. Now, Paul Linebarger is not the only person Annalee talks about in this book. They are concerned with a large amount of examples of propaganda and how propaganda dominates the modern world. Let me read some of the chapter titles they've got. Let me flick back. The Mind Bomb, a Fake Frontier. Advertisements for Disenfranchisement. Bad Brains, School Rules. Dirty Comics. History is a Gift. Programming for Democracy. Public Spares of the Future. This book is an essential book to understand exactly the kind of nonsense that has been chucked out on the internet via people engaging in endless, shall we say, back and forth on their channels, where you get two sides sometimes arguing with each other, and it's obviously botting, and where that's obviously a tactic designed to make you wonder what the heck is going on. And Annalee spends a great time analyzing that and what's going on and why that kind of strategy is used, and how strategies like that are used to program the public, and how strategies of that like that have been used historically to program us all. It's a very interesting book. And to be fair, Paul Linebarger's propaganda looks innocent compared to it, because Linebarger at the least wanted to use propaganda to end wars and hope they would end them and that we wouldn't have any more. That was his possibly naive hope, I would say. At least it was a pleasant hope. But if you want to understand in some detail the nonsense that's going on, here we go. Propaganda disaster prepping. In 2020, I witnessed an online influence campaign so devious I could not stop thinking about it. In fact, it inspired me to begin researching this book. The reason I found it so compelling was it was a two-stage psyop. First, the unknown operatives spread a wave of disinformation. Next, they spread a second wave that was designed to inoculate people against any efforts to debunk the first wave of disinformation. It was incredibly intricate and complex, and here's how it went down. Like many Americans, I had been getting most of my news about the Black Lives Matter protests on Twitter, following eyewitness protests in various cities. One night, I started to see posts on Twitter claiming that the entire DC area was in lockdown and there was a blackout. Posts with the hashtag DC blackout began piling up in my feed, and at first they seemed credible. They appeared to be from ordinary citizens reporting from the ground. But then I noticed some red flags that made this DC blackout report seem suspicious. First of all, many people posting under the hashtag using the exact same words to describe what was happening, as if they were copy-pasting from a script. That was definitely a signature move of operatives who didn't have the time to come up with more organic-sounding content. Of course, a couple of years later, they could have tried to use AI to cut around that a bit. But then came the Kappa post with the DC blackout hashtag started sharing a new message, which was that law enforcement was blocking cell phone access to prevent them sharing the truth. That's when I knew DC blackout was a ruse. How could people be posting on their phones from the scene of the protests if their cell phone signals are blocked? Despite this logical inconsistency, rumors of the blackout spread quickly, resulting in 500 tweets with the DC blackout hashtag. Some included fake images of a fire near the Washington Monument, which came from the fictional TV series Designated Survivor. Reputable news sources moved to counter the blackout rumors, and we're seeing tweets from NPR and Washington Post reporters with selfies proving that they were in DC, surrounded by well-lit buildings and street lamps. And that's when the second wave of the psyop began to inundate my feed. Hundreds of posts with a new hashtag DC Safe starting to pop up, denying that the BC blackout was happening. Unlike the tweets from news reporters debunking the blackout, these tweets were clearly copy and pasted by side warriors or maybe bots. They all use the exact same quirky phrasing. Yeah, as someone seeing DC blackout trending who lives and works in the DC metro and has friends telecommuting into DCRN, this hashtag looks like information. No social media from DC. It was a psyop designed to look like a psyop. And this book is great for detailing how this sort of stuff is being used to make a mess of social media and why we're seeing an upsurge in, shall we say, a splurge of far right and ethno-nationalist sites and idiots of that kind polluting the airwaves. What was once meant to be a platform where people would share knowledge has become a platform where people share the same old prejudices and the same old stuff designed to push a Bolshevik mineshaft.